The most dangerous lies aren't the ones shouted in anger, but the ones whispered onto the leather seats of a private jet. Julian Ashford believed he was flying to paradise with his mistress. He thought his wife, Ilara, was at home, naive, pregnant, and completely unaware. He was wrong about everything. He didn't just book a flight, he booked his own destruction. Because while he was her husband, she was his owner, in every way that mattered. And the descent was going to be brutal. This is the story of how a man tried to cheat at 40,000 feet, only to discover his wife owned the sky. Julian Ashford checked his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse. The view stretched over Central Park, a glittering carpet of lights that he considered his birthright. He adjusted the cuffs of his Tom Ford shirt, a smug smile playing on his lips. At 42, he was the picture of success, handsome, ruthless, and the executive vice president of Ashford Hale Global, a private equity firm that, in his mind, he had built from the ground up. In the softer light of the living room, his wife, Ilara, sat curled on a sofa. She was 7 months pregnant, a slight woman made rounder by the life she carried. She was reading, not a fashion magazine, but a dense logistics report filled with fuel indices and flight crew duty rosters. "Still tinkering with that little airline hobby, darling?" Julian said, his voice dripping with condescension. He walked over and kissed the top of her head. "It's sweet." Ilara looked up, her grey eyes clear and analytical. "It's not a hobby, Julian. Ascend Charter Services turned a 17% profit last quarter." Yes, I'm sure it did," he placated, patting her shoulder. "As long as it keeps you busy. Now, I have to finish packing." "Chicago again?" Ilara asked, her gaze returning to the report. "Afraid so. This deal in the Midwest is crucial. Just a quick overnight, in and out. The board is demanding an in-person presentation." He straightened his tie. "Don't wait up for me. You're packing a linen suit for Chicago. In October?" Julian paused, his back to her. "The hotel has an indoor pool, Ilara. I thought I might get a swim. Relax." He forced a laugh. "You should know. I'm taking the corporate jet. The team needs me fresh." "The corporate jet?" Ilara asked, her voice quiet. "Ashford Hale doesn't have a corporate jet, Julian. We have a NetJet fractional ownership." "Semantics," he waved dismissively. "I'm chartering. It's all on the corporate account. Don't worry your pretty, pregnant head about it." Ilara watched him walk into their master bedroom. The little airline hobby she was tinkering with was Ascend Charter Services, ACS, a premier private aviation company her father had built from a single Learjet into a fleet of 40 state-of-the-art aircraft. Since his passing, Ilara had taken over, not as a figurehead, but as the active, brilliant CEO. Julian, whom she had met when he was a hungry, ambitious analyst, managed one of the many subsidiaries of the Hale family's massive holding company. He seemed to forget that his entire firm, Ashford Hale Global, was, in fact, entirely owned by her. His paycheck, his corporate card, his penthouse, all of it flowed from her trust, from the Hale empire. She had let him believe in his own importance. It seemed to make him happy. His ego was a fragile, demanding thing, and it was simply easier to manage it than to fight it. While he played king in his boardroom, she quietly ran an empire. Later that night, as she lay in bed alone, his phone, left on the nightstand, buzzed. It was plugged in, the screen lighting up. Ilara glanced over. A text from C. Vance. "Cannot wait for tomorrow. Italy. You are my king. I've already packed the red dress. You won't be able to resist." Ilara's breath hitched. Italy. Not Chicago. C. Vance. Chloe Vance. a junior analyst at Julian's firm, a stunning, hungry-looking woman Ilara had met at the company Christmas party, a woman whose eyes had lingered on Julian far too long. The blood drained from Ilara's face, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. The lie wasn't just about another woman. The lie was about everything. He was using her own money, the funds from the company she owned, to fly his mistress to Italy. He was packing linen. She picked up her own phone, her fingers moving with precision. She opened the secure portal for Ascend charter services. She didn't need to guess which airline he'd booked. Arrogant men were creatures of habit. He would book her airline, believing it was just some anonymous charter service, because he knew ACS had the best, the Gulfstream G650s, the Bombardier Globals. He would want to show off. She logged into the executive manifest for the Teterboro, TEB, FBO. And there it was, Flight 722, N900 ACS, a Gulfstream G650UR, departure 10 Max AM, destination Linate, Lynn, Milan, Italy, passenger manifest 2, primary PAX, Mr. Julian Ashford. Guest PAX, Ms. Chloe Vance, billing, Ashford Hale Global Corporate Account. Ilara looked at the special requests. 1 bottle of Armand de Brignac, Ace of Spades champagne, chilled. Petrosian caviar with blinis, a cold lobster platter. He was throwing a party in her sky. A cold, sharp fury, cleaner and more powerful than any sadness, settled over her. He didn't just underestimate her as a wife. He underestimated her as a businesswoman. He was staging his affair inside her own multi-million-dollar asset. She closed her eyes, her hand moving to rest on her pregnant belly. "He has no idea," she whispered. He had no idea who he was dealing with. She picked up the phone and dialed the number for her head of operations, a man who had worked for her father for 20 years. "David," she said, her voice perfectly level. "It's Ilara Hale. I need to make a sensitive, last-minute alteration to the flight plan for N900 ACS tomorrow morning. No, the client will not be aware of it until he's airborne. And get me Captain Miller. I want him on this flight. He'll know what to do." Chloe Vance zipped up her 4th suitcase. It was a bright, obnoxious pink, emblazoned with a designer logo that screamed, "New money." She looked around her tiny studio apartment, a cramped box in a nondescript part of Jersey City, and sneered. "Goodbye, you dump," she said to the empty room. Her phone buzzed. It was Julian, at the FBO. "Car is sending for you now. Don't be late." Chloe laughed. "Don't be late." As if. She had been ready for this moment her entire life. She was 25 years old, and she had spent the last 3 years in the analyst pool at Ashford Hale, fetching coffee and running spreadsheets, all while watching the partners. She didn't want to be them. She wanted to marry them. Julian Ashford was her golden ticket. He was handsome, powerful, and, best of all, married to a mousy, boring heiress who, in Chloe's opinion, didn't deserve him. Chloe had seen Ilara Hale at that Christmas party, quiet, dressed down, and visibly pregnant. Pathetic, Chloe had thought. Letting herself go. Chloe had made her move 6 months ago. A late night working at the office, a feigned crisis over a merger document, a shared bottle of whiskey in his office. Julian had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. He was so desperate to be seen as the powerful, desirable man he pretended to be, that he was easy prey for a woman who reflected that image back at him. Now, this trip. Italy. "Just a business trip," he'd told her, a wink in his eye. "You can be my very special assistant." She'd squealed. She'd spent 2 months' salary on a new wardrobe. This was it. This was the moment she would seal the deal, convince him to leave his pregnant, boring wife and make her the new Mrs. Ashford. A black Escalade, commissioned by Julian through the charter service, idled outside her building. The driver loaded her 4 bags. She slid onto the plush leather seats, feeling like a star. When she arrived at the private FBO at Teterboro, Julian was waiting inside the sleek, quiet terminal. He looked every bit the master of the universe, sipping an espresso, his eyes scanning the tarmac. "There you are," he said, kissing her full on the lips. He didn't care who saw. This was his world. "The plane, Julian," Chloe breathed, looking out the window. Is that it?" Parked just outside, gleaming white under the morning sun, was a Gulfstream G050ER. It was long, sleek, and impossibly elegant. "That's our ride," Julian said, grabbing her hand. "Ascend Charter Services. They're the best. Only the best for you, baby." "Ascend," Chloe murmured. "Isn't that—" "Just a name," Julian cut her off. "They're one of the biggest operators on the East Coast. Now come on, they're ready for us." A uniformed pilot and a flight attendant were waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Ashford, Ms. Vance." The flight attendant, a polished woman in her 40s named Sarah, smiled. "I'm Sarah, and I'll be taking care of you on our flight to Milan today." "Milan?" Chloe giggled, squeezing Julian's arm. "I love the sound of that." They stepped inside. The cabin was a masterpiece of cream leather, polished dark wood, and brushed platinum. It smelled like wealth. There were 2 distinct living areas, a full galley and a private stateroom in the back. "Oh, Julian," Chloe whispered, her eyes wide. She ran her hand over the supple leather of the club chair. This is how life is supposed to be." "Get used to it," Julian said, settling into a seat and accepting a pre-departure glass of water from Sarah. He declined the champagne. "Not until we're in the air. We toast to our future." As the jet door was sealed, Chloe felt a definitive click. She was leaving her old life behind. She looked at Julian, who was busy texting on his phone, probably sending some last-minute lie to his wife. Poor Elara, Chloe thought, feeling a sudden, sharp spike of pity that was really just contempt. Stuck at home, getting fat, while her husband takes me to Italy. The 2 massive Rolls-Royce engines spooled up with a deep, powerful hum. The jet taxied, smooth as silk, and in moments they were accelerating down the runway, a surge of power pinning them to their seats. They lifted off, climbing steeply over the New York skyline, banking east over the Atlantic. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged off. "And now," Julian said, his eyes glittering. Sarah appeared, as if on cue, with the silver ice bucket and the green-gold bottle of Armand de Brignac. The cork popped with a satisfying thwump. She poured 2 crystal flutes. Julian raised his. "To us, Chloe," he said, "to new beginnings, and to a long, long weekend in Lake Como." "To us," she chirped. They clinked glasses. The champagne was crisp, expensive, and tasted like victory. Chloe settled back, sipping her drink, and watched the curve of the earth appear as they climbed to 41,000 feet. She was, quite literally, on top of the world. While Chloe and Julian were toasting over the Atlantic, Elara Hale was in the ACS Operations Center, a high-tech nerve center adjacent to the main Teterboro hangar. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of 24 monitors displaying weather patterns, flight paths, and aircraft telemetry. It was the beating heart of her company. David Chen, her head of operations, stood beside her, a tablet in his hand. David was a quiet, precise man who had started as a baggage handler for Elara's father. His loyalty was absolute. 900 ACS is wheels up as of 10:04 a.m., David reported. They've passed 10,000 feet and are on their cleared transatlantic route. Estimated arrival in Milan. Well, that's irrelevant now. "Good," Elara said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. She was wearing simple black trousers and a cashmere sweater, her pregnancy a gentle curve under the fabric. She looked less like a grieving wife and more like a general commanding a war room. "Captain Miller is at the controls," David continued. "First Officer Reynolds is with him. Both are senior pilots. Flight Attendant Sarah is the best we have. She's aware there's a sensitive situation with the client, but knows no details, only to follow the captain's lead." "And the new flight plan?" "Filed and cloaked. As far as any air traffic controller is concerned, it's a standard filing. The diversion will be logged as a client-requested route change once they're in oceanic airspace. Completely standard procedure, Mrs. Hale. No flags." "Elara," she corrected him, as she always did. "Please, David, call me Elara." "Elara," he nodded, a flicker of deep respect in his eyes. "The crew at BGR is standing by." "BGR," Elara said, testing the name. "Bangor, Maine. It was one of ACS's key technical stops and refueling hubs for transatlantic flights. It was also remote, quiet, and home to a massive private ACS maintenance hangar that she owned outright. It was the perfect place." "And the other matter?" she asked. David tapped his tablet. "Our legal team, led by Arthur Bennett, is en route to BGR on your G700. They will arrive approximately 2 hours before N900 ACS. The local sheriff's department has been notified that we will have a private security detail meeting a flight. We've filed a trespass warning for 2 individuals, names to be provided upon arrival, just in case they become uncooperative." "They will be," Elara said. "Julian doesn't like to lose." She had spent the last 12 hours meticulously dismantling his life. While he was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of Italy, she had been on a 4-way conference call with her legal, financial, and security teams. First, she'd had Arthur Bennett, her family's notoriously brutal lawyer, draw up the divorce papers. The petition was ironclad, citing adultery, and included a motion to immediately freeze all shared assets pending review. Second, she convened an emergency virtual board meeting of the Hale Holding Company. As majority shareholder and chairwoman, it was a formality. She presented the evidence: Julian Ashford's corporate card statements, which were a sea of illicit dinners at Daniel and Le Bernardin, jewelry receipts from Cartier, and now the charter of a $65 million jet for his mistress. The board voted unanimously. Julian Ashford was terminated, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and embezzlement of company funds. Third, she had her security team change the locks and access codes to the penthouse. His belongings were, at that very moment, being boxed up and sent to a storage unit in Queens. She was methodical. She was precise. She was her father's daughter. The betrayal had hurt. Waking up to that text message felt like a physical blow, a theft of air from her lungs. The fact that he could do this while she was carrying his child, it was a special kind of cruelty. But the grief had lasted only an hour. It was quickly replaced by a cold, crystalline rage. He hadn't just betrayed her as a wife, he had insulted her as an owner. He had used her own power against her, assuming she had none. He thought she was a hobbyist. He thought she was sweet. Julian had made the cardinal sin of all arrogant men. He had confused kindness for weakness. "David," Elara said, turning away from the glowing map of the North Atlantic, "I'll be flying to Bangor myself. Have my jet ready in 30 minutes. "You're going to be there?" David asked, surprised. "Elara, are you sure? With your condition?" "My condition makes me clearer, David, not weaker," she said. "I'm pregnant, not incapacitated. He started this using my company. I will end it inside my company. I want to see his face when he realizes he didn't just book a flight. He booked his own judgment day." Elara walked out of the operations center and across the tarmac to her personal jet, a sleek Bombardier Global 7500. As she boarded, She looked east into the high, clear sky where N900 ACS was speeding toward a destination it would never reach. "Enjoy the champagne, Julian," she whispered to the wind. "It's the last thing you'll ever get from me." 3 hours into the flight, 900 ACS was a silver speck over the vast, empty blue of the North Atlantic. The point of no return had been passed. They were in oceanic airspace, handed off from one anonymous controller to another via high-frequency radio. Inside the cabin, the party was in full swing. The first bottle of Armand de Brignac was empty. The caviar had been devoured. Julian had his tie undone, his feet up. Chloe, giddy and slightly drunk, was taking selfies, carefully angling the camera to show the ACS logo on the bulkhead and the champagne flute in her hand. "Julian, this is life," she slurred happily, snuggling against him. "We should do this every month. Maybe we can go to Dubai next, or St. Bart's? Whatever you want, baby," Julian murmured. He was feeling expansive, powerful. The G650 was an incredible machine. He felt like a true master of the universe. He'd even sent a text to Elara. "Long day. Chicago is freezing. Board meeting was a success. Love you." He'd winced at the "love you," but it was necessary. Keep her docile, keep her at home, nesting. He looked at Chloe, at her youth, her flawless skin, her overt adoration. This was what he deserved. Not a quiet, intellectual wife who was more interested in engine maintenance reports than in him. In the galley, Sarah, the flight attendant, was cleaning the crystal flutes. Her earpiece chirped. It was a secure text-based message from the cockpit, routed through the plane's satellite communications. Cabin, F.A. Sarah. Secure from FLT-DK. We will be initiating a diversion in 10 minutes. ACAR's message from OPS. Client requested diversion to BGR. Repeat, BGR. Sarah's professional mask didn't slip, but her eyebrows rose. BGR. Bangor. The client had been so insistent on Milan. This was strange. A client-requested diversion that the client clearly hadn't requested. She knew what this meant. This was an owner-level directive. She'd been with ACIS for 15 years. She'd seen Elara Hale grow up. She'd adored Elara's father. She looked back into the cabin at Julian and Chloe, who were now laughing loudly, their feet on the priceless wood veneer tables. A flicker of disdain crossed her face before she smoothed it away. Galley. FLT-DK. Acknowledged. Cabin secure. In the cockpit, Captain Miller, a silver-haired veteran, looked at his first officer. "Right," Miller said. "Message received. OPS confirms. We're turning to heading 310. Contact Gander. We're diverting to BGR." "Reason?" the first officer asked. "Owner's prerogative," Miller said gruffly. He wasn't paid to ask questions, but he'd seen the passenger manifest. He knew who Julian Ashford was, and he knew who Elara Hale was. He could put two and two together. "Let's make it sound good." Captain Miller switched on the intercom. His voice, calm and authoritative, filled the cabin. "Folks, this is Captain Miller up front. Apologies for the interruption. We've just received a word from our operations center. Unfortunately, it appears there's an unexpected and significant ground crew strike unfolding at Linate Airport in Milan. All private aviation handling has been suspended indefinitely." In the cabin, Julian and Chloe sat up straight. "What?" Julian said aloud. "Suspended? What the hell does that mean?" "Due to this unforeseen closure," the captain's voice continued, "we are not permitted to land in Milan. We are working on an alternative, but for now, we must divert. We'll be turning toward Bangor, Maine, which is our primary Atlantic hub. We will land there, refuel, and our ground team will try to arrange a new flight plan. I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. Sarah will be through to secure the cabin. We expect to be on the ground in Bangor in about 90 minutes. The intercom clicked off. Bangor? Chloe shrieked. Maine! What is in Maine? I didn't pack for Maine. Calm down, Julian snapped, his good mood vanishing. This is ridiculous. A strike? Get me the captain. He hit the call button angrily. Sarah appeared. Mr. Ashford? This is unacceptable, Julian fumed. I'm a priority client. Get the captain on the sat phone. I want to talk to operations. I have a connecting car in Milan. This is a multi-million-dollar business trip. I'm very sorry, sir, Sarah said, her voice a mask of professional regret. The captain is currently handling the diversion with air traffic control and cannot be disturbed. As for operations, I'm afraid there's nothing they can do about a labor strike. Our hands are tied. The entire Milan airspace is affected. It was a brilliant lie, specific, plausible, and completely non-negotiable. This is... Julian was sputtering, his face red. He was losing control and he hated it. Can we go to Paris? Rome? Chloe pleaded. I'm afraid Bangor is the closest and most logical port of entry, madam, Sarah said. We have to clear customs, and our full-service BGR facility is the fastest place to do that. I'll need you to return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. We'll be starting our descent shortly. Chloe slumped back into her chair, her arms crossed, her bottom lip trembling. This is ruined. Everything is ruined. Julian stared out the window. The plane was in a long, gentle bank to the left. The sun was now on the wrong side. He was no longer flying toward paradise. He was flying back toward the continent he'd just left, to a cold, forgotten airport in Maine. It's fine, he said, trying to regain his composure. It's a delay. Just a delay. We'll get to the ground, I'll yell at someone, and they'll get us a new plane to Italy. This is just a logistical hiccup. But a small, cold worm of unease began to twist in his gut. A strike. It was just too convenient and too absolute. He looked at Sarah, the flight attendant, who was calmly collecting their empty glasses, her face a perfect, polite blank. He was losing his power, and it terrified him. 90 minutes later, the wheels of the G650 touched down with a gentle puff of smoke on the runway at Bangor International Airport. The 90-minute flight to Bangor was excruciatingly silent. The party atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a thick, sullen tension. Chloe pouted, scrolling through her phone, which had no service, while Julian stewed, his mind racing. A strike. It had to be a strike. What other explanation could there be? He'd read about those snap strikes in Europe. It was just his rotten luck. His entire, perfectly planned romantic getaway, derailed by a bunch of union baggage handlers. He rehearsed the speech he would give to the ground crew. He would demand a new flight immediately. He would threaten to take his business elsewhere. He would remind them just how important he was. The Ashford Hale account was worth millions in charter hours. They wouldn't want to lose that. He'd probably get this flight for free, as compensation. Yes, that was it. He'd turn this around. Just you wait, Chloe, he said, as the plane began its final approach. I'm going to have us on a new jet to Rome within the hour. I'll make them pay for this. Chloe just grunted. The plane landed smoothly. Julian looked out the window, expecting to see the bright, welcoming lights of a private terminal, an FBO like the one at Teterboro. Instead, the G650 taxied and taxied. They passed the main terminal. They passed the private hangars. They kept going, down a dark service road toward a remote part of the airfield. "Where are we going?" Chloe asked, her voice nervous. "This isn't the terminal." "It's probably a customs area," Julian said, though his own unease was growing. The jet made a final slow turn and rolled to a stop. It didn't stop on an open ramp. It rolled inside a building, a massive, cavernous, and sterilely lit maintenance hangar. With a final whine, the engines began to spool down. The sudden, heavy silence was deafening. Outside the window, there was no red carpet, no waiting car, just the polished grey concrete floor of a hangar lit by harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights. "What is this?" Julian demanded, standing up. "Sarah, what is going on? This is a maintenance hangar." "The captain has asked that you deplane here, Mr. Ashford," Sarah said. Her voice was different. The polite warmth was gone, replaced by a cold, flat efficiency. "Please take all your personal belongings with you." "I'm not going anywhere until I speak to the operations manager," Julian snapped. "He's not available, but the owner's representative is waiting for you." "The owner's?" Julian stopped. Oh, finally. Good. About time someone with authority showed up. He straightened his shirt, preparing for battle. He'd have this sorted in 5 minutes. The main cabin door unsealed with a hydraulic hiss. The stairs slowly, silently unfolded, touching the concrete floor. A blast of cold, damp air filled the cabin. "Come on, Chloe," Julian said, grabbing his briefcase. "Let's go sort this mess out." Chloe, looking pale and confused, grabbed her designer purse. They walked to the door and stood at the top of the stairs. The hangar was vast, big enough to hold 3 G650s. Their jet was parked in the center, and standing about 50 feet away, directly in front of them, were several figures. Julian's eyes focused. He squinted. The figures were standing beside a different jet, a sleek bombardier. And the central figure. Julian's blood turned to ice. His stomach dropped, as if the jet had fallen 10,000 feet. It was Alara. She was not in Manhattan. She was not nesting. She was here, in a hangar in Maine, standing with her hands clasped in front of her. She was flanked by 2 very large men in dark suits, and a third man, older, with a face like a hawk, holding a leather satchel. Julian recognized him instantly. It was Arthur Bennett, the family lawyer. The shark. "Alara?" Julian whispered. The name came out as a dry croak. Chloe, standing behind him, saw her too. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Oh my God, Julian, that's your wife." Julian's mind fractured. It tried, desperately, to assemble the pieces. Alara. Here. The lawyer. The hangar. The strike. There was no strike. The realization hit him not as a thought, but as a physical force, a punch to the gut that left him breathless. "Alara!" he called out, forcing a smile, his voice echoing unnaturally in the huge space. He started down the steps, pulling his confused, loving husband mask into place. "Darling, what on earth are you doing here? Our flight. There was a strike in Milan. It was diverted. What a crazy coincidence." Alara didn't move. She just watched him approach, her grey eyes as cold and flat as the concrete floor. "There was no coincidence, Julian," she said. Her voice was clear, cutting through the silence. "And there was no strike." Julian stopped, about 10 feet from her. Chloe hovered behind him, a pale ghost. What are you talking about?" Julian stammered. "The captain said—" "The captain," Alara interrupted, "is Captain Miller. He's been with my family for 20 years. He follows my orders, Julian, not yours. I diverted the flight. Welcome to Bangor. I believe it's lovely this time of year, though you won't be staying long." Julian's world tilted. He looked from Alara's cold face to the massive, gleaming Gulf Stream he had just left. He looked at the ACS logo on the hangar wall. Ascend Charter Services. Your family?" he said, his mind slow. This is just some airline we use." Alara let out a small, dry laugh. It was a terrifying sound. You poor, arrogant fool. You've been married to me for 5 years. You've been running a company that my company owns. And you never once, not once, paid enough attention to know what I actually do. She took a step forward. My father, Robert Hale, founded Ascend Charter Services. This hangar, this jet, the pilots, the flight attendant you've been ordering around, they are all mine. You didn't charter a flight, Julian. You borrowed my plane for your affair. The blood drained from Julian's face. He was white as a sheet. Elara, listen, this isn't... I can explain. Explain what? She asked. Explain her? She flicked her eyes toward Chloe, a look of such profound dismissal that Chloe visibly flinched. Explain Ms. C. Vance on the manifest. Explain the Armand de Brignac and the lobster. Explain the hotel reservation at the Villa d'Est on my corporate card, the one you thought I didn't see. Julian, Chloe whimpered. You told me she didn't know anything about the business. You told me she was just a housewife. Shut up, Chloe, Julian hissed, panic rising in his throat. He turned back to Elara, his hands raised. Elara, baby, listen to me. This is a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. That woman means nothing to me. I was stressed. The pressure of the job. You've been so distant. Distant, Elara said, her voice rising for the first time, sharp as glass. I've been pregnant, Julian. I've been growing your child while you were buying lingerie for a 25-year-old analyst. Please, Elara, he begged. He was desperate now. We can fix this. I'll fire her. I'll do anything. Don't do this. Think of the baby. I am, Elara said. I'm thinking of the world I want to bring my child into, and it's not one that has you in it. She nodded to the lawyer. Arthur Bennett stepped forward, his face impassive. Mr. Ashford, Arthur said, his voice a dry rustle. He opened his satchel and produced a thick file. You are hereby served with a petition for divorce, citing adultery. Your assets, those which are not protected by the Hale Family Trust, which is to say, almost nothing, are frozen, pending this action. Julian just stared at the papers. Furthermore, Arthur continued, pulling out a second, thinner file. This is a letter of termination from the board of Ashford Hale Global, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and felony embezzlement of company funds. Your access codes, your corporate accounts, and your key to the penthouse have all been deactivated. You are to have no further contact with any employee of the Hale Holding Company. Embezzlement, Julian choked. I built that firm. You can't fire me. You didn't build it, Julian. You were an employee, Elara said simply. A very, very overpaid employee, and you stole from me. This little trip alone is over $100,000 in jet time, catering, and crew. Julian's entire life, the penthouse, the cars, the reputation, the power, it was all vanishing, right here, under the fluorescent lights of a hangar in Maine. He looked at Elara, at her calm, powerful stance. The mousy, sweet wife was gone. In her place was a CEO, a queen, an executioner. He had never really seen her, not until this moment. So that's it? He whispered, his voice broken. You strand me in Maine? No, Elara said. I'm not stranding you. This is my private hangar. You are trespassing. She nodded to the two large security men, who took a step forward. They will escort you and Ms. Vance to the main terminal. She looked at him one last time, her eyes sweeping over the man she thought she knew. I believe there's a 6:00 a.m. commuter flight to Boston. It's coach. I trust you have your personal wallet, as your corporate cards are, of course, no longer functional. I hope you saved Julian." She turned without another word and walked toward her bombardier jet, its stairs already deployed. Arthur Bennett followed her. "Elara!" Julian shouted, a last desperate cry. "Elara, please, don't leave me here. I love you." Elara paused at the top of her jet stairs. She looked back, her face illuminated by the warm light from her cabin. "No, Julian," she said, her voice clear across the distance. "You didn't love me. You loved what I gave you, and you just lost it." She disappeared inside, the door sealed. The heavy thud of the bombardier's door sealing echoed in the cavernous hangar. It was a sound of absolute finality. A full, terrible silence descended, broken only by the quiet hum of the hangar's ventilation system. Julian Ashford stood frozen, the legal papers clutched in his numb hand. The termination letter was on top. The words, "gross misconduct," seemed to pulse under the harsh light. "Well," said one of the security men, stepping forward. He was built like a refrigerator and had a completely impassive face. "You heard the lady. Time to go." I... Julian couldn't form a sentence. His brain had stalled. Chloe finally broke. The shock and silence shattered, and she let out a wailing sob. "You lied to me!" she shrieked, turning on Julian. She hit his chest with her fists. "You told me you were the boss. You told me she was nothing. You ruined my life. Get off me!" Julian snarled, pushing her away. Chloe stumbled, her high-end heels scraping on the concrete. She was a mess, mascara running in black rivers down her pale face. "My bags!" Chloe suddenly remembered, looking wildly back at the G650. "My 4 suitcases! My new clothes! I need my bags!" "The baggage is being transferred, ma'am," the second security guard said, not unkindly. "It'll be at the main terminal for you to check. Assuming," he added, "you can pay the baggage fees." The humiliation of it was a physical acid. The thought of his carefully packed Tom Ford suits and Chloe's designer dresses being hauled into the main terminal, of them having to stand in line at the coach check-in. It was unthinkable. "I am not flying coach," Julian said, his voice low and trembling with rage. "I am Julian Ashford." "You were Julian Ashford," the first guard said, his patience clearly gone. "Right now, you're just a guy trespassing in Mrs. Hale's hangar. Let's go. Now." He put a large hand on Julian's shoulder. Julian flinched, but the grip was like iron. He had no choice. The 2 security men walked them, one in front, one behind, toward a small metal service door in the corner of the hangar. As they walked, the engines on Elara's bombardier jet spooled up, the deep, powerful hum filling the space. Julian didn't look back. He couldn't. The guards pushed them through the service door, out into the pre-dawn chill of the Maine morning. It was dark, cold, and smelled of jet fuel and pine. A simple black sedan was waiting. "This will take you to the main terminal," the guard said. "Don't come back to this side of the airfield. You won't be welcome." He shut the door. Julian and Chloe sat in the back of the car, separated by a chasm of mutual hatred and failure. They didn't speak. The car drove them around the perimeter of the airport. As they neared the terminal, Elara's bombardier screamed overhead, climbing fast and steep into the dark sky, its navigation lights blinking, heading south, heading home. They were dropped at the curb for departures. It was 4:30 a.m. The terminal was mostly empty, save for a few sleepy travelers and a janitor. Julian walked, like a zombie, to the ticket counter. I need 2 tickets on the 6 a.m. flight to Boston," he said to the agent. "That'll be $480, the agent said, chewing gum. Julian pulled out his wallet. His hand trembled as he pulled out his personal visa. He had been so used to the black corporate Amex, the card that never declined. He handed it to the agent. The agent swiped it. and swiped it again. "Sorry, sir," she said, her voice bored. "It's declined." "What?" Julian's voice cracked. "That's impossible. Try it again." She tried it again. "Declined." "Do you have another card?" Elara. She hadn't just frozen the shared assets. She must have had him removed from their personal accounts too. The prenup. He'd barely read it. He'd been so in love, so sure he could charm her. He'd signed whatever Arthur Bennett had put in front of him. He was broke. "Julian?" Chloe's voice was sharp. "Julian, pay for the tickets." I can't," he whispered. "What do you mean you can't?" she shrieked, drawing the attention of the janitor. It's declined." Chloe stared at him, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated loathing. "You are useless," she spat. She opened her own purse, pulled out her emergency credit card, and slammed it on the counter. "One ticket. Just mine." "Chloe, wait!" Julian grabbed her arm. "You can't leave me here." "Watch me," she snarled, snatching her ticket from the agent. "You're nothing. You're a fraud. And you're broke." She turned and marched toward the security checkpoint, her single carry-on rolling behind her, not once looking back. Julian Ashford stood alone in the Bangor International Airport terminal. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a weak grey light through the windows. He had $200 in cash in his wallet, a phone that was now just a useless piece of glass, and a set of divorce papers. He had flown to 40,000 feet, thinking he was a king, only to be brought crashing down to earth by the woman he thought was a fool. He had lost his wife, his job, his mistress, and his future, all before breakfast. The owner had welcomed him. And then, she had taken everything. The automatic doors of the Bangor terminal slid shut behind him, muffling the sound of Chloe's retreating footsteps and the bored chatter of the ticket agent. Julian Ashford stood on the curb in the weak 4:45 a.m. light. The air was frigid, cutting through his expensive unlined linen suit, the suit he'd packed for Italy. For Lake Como. He shivered, a deep, convulsive shudder that came not just from the cold, but from the bone-deep shock. He was nothing. He had $212 in cash and a phone that was now, he discovered, completely dead. The HailNet corporate plan he was on had been severed. He had no data, no contacts, no ability to call a car. He was as isolated as if he'd been dropped on a desert island. He looked around. The terminal was a small, lonely outpost. A sign pointed to ground transportation. He walked, his briefcase, once a symbol of his power, now just a heavy, useless box, banging against his leg. "Bus?" he asked the dispatcher at the taxi stand, the word feeling alien and disgusting on his tongue. "Is there a bus? To New York?" The dispatcher, a large woman in a fleece vest, looked him up and down, taking in the expensive suit and the desperate eyes. "Greyhound station's downtown, 5 miles. Bus to Boston, leaves at 7:02 a.m. You can connect to New York from there. Cab'll run you $20. Julian handed over a $20 bill from his dwindling cash. The cab ride was silent, the driver humming along to a country music station as they drove through the dark, unfamiliar streets of Bangor. Julian just stared, his mind a white-hot static. The bus station was worse. It smelled of stale coffee, disinfectant, and desperation. He paid $88 in cash for a one-way ticket. He sat in a hard plastic chair, waiting for 2 hours, surrounded by people he'd spent his entire life actively ignoring. He, Julian Ashford, who flew Gulfstreams, was waiting for a Greyhound. While Julian was breathing in the fumes of the bus terminal, Elara Hale was at 45,000 feet, heading south. The cabin of her Global 7500 was quiet, the lighting set to a soft, dawn-like glow. She had slept for an hour, a deep, restful sleep. Now she was sipping a chamomile tea and reviewing quarterly maintenance projections on her tablet. Arthur Bennett sat across from her, his own tablet glowing. "The termination is clean," he said quietly. "The for-cause clause in his employment contract, which I wrote, is ironclad. He has no stock options that weren't vested through the holding company, and his entire 401k was based on company matching, which we can and will claw back due to the felony embezzlement." "Good," Elara said. "I want him left with nothing he didn't earn before he met me, which, as I recall, was a 2014 model BMW and $70,000 as in student debt." "Precisely," Arthur said, a thin smile touching his lips. "As for the penthouse, the doormen at 740 Park have been given his photo and a standing no trespass order. They are very, very loyal to your family, Elara. He won't get within 100 feet of the lobby." "And Ms. Vance?" "Terminated, same as Ashford. Her access was cut before she landed in Boston. She's just a girl with a lot of new clothes and a maxed-out credit card. She's irrelevant." Elara nodded, satisfied. She closed her report and looked out the window at the curved, blue line of the earth. She felt a kick, low and firm in her belly. She placed a hand there. "It's done," she whispered. "We're safe." This wasn't a celebration, it was a cleansing. She hadn't just removed a cheating husband. She had excised a cancer. The bus was a special kind of hell. It was slow. It stopped in 6 forgotten towns in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Julian was crammed into a seat next to a man who smelled of sour whiskey. He hadn't eaten. He was exhausted, humiliated, and filthy. The linen suit was hopelessly wrinkled, stained with something from the terminal seat. By the time the bus pulled into Boston South Station, it was early afternoon. He had another 2-hour wait. He bought a stale pretzel and a bottle of water. $11. He was down to $130. Meanwhile, Chloe Vance was in the baggage claim at Logan Airport, screaming at a skycap. Her 4 pink suitcases were sitting in the oversize area, and the airline was demanding a $300 fee for the extra weight, a fee Julian was supposed to have paid. "My card won't work," she yelled, her voice hoarse from crying. "Just give me my bags." "Can't, miss. Not till it's paid." She tried her work email. Access denied. She tried her corporate Amex. Declined. She tried her personal card again. It, too, was declined. She was completely, totally ruined. She had no job, no money, and no way to even get her clothes. She sank onto a baggage carousel, her sobs echoing in the cavernous room, just another piece of unclaimed luggage. It was nearly 9:15 p.m. when Julian's bus finally descended into the diesel-choked bowels of the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan. He stumbled out, his body aching, his head pounding. He was back in his city, but it felt like a foreign country. He was on 42nd Street. His penthouse was on 74th and Park. He couldn't afford a cab. He didn't have the energy to figure out the subway. So he walked. He walked 32 blocks, his briefcase getting heavier with every step. The city he used to own, the city he looked down on from his glass-walled penthouse, now seemed to sneer at him from every direction. The doormen, the valets, the couples dining in beautiful lit-up restaurants. They were all part of a world he was no longer in. He finally reached his building. 740 Park. The limestone facade glowed with old money and impenetrable power. He walked toward the gleaming brass doors. Thomas, the night doorman, a man who had accepted $1,000 Christmas tips from Julian for 5 years, stepped out. He didn't open the door. He held his hands up, palms out. "Mr. Ashford," Thomas said, his voice polite but cold. "I'm sorry, sir. I cannot let you in." "Thomas, what are you talking about?" Julian panted, exhausted. "It's me. It's my home. Just let me in. "I have strict instructions from Mrs. Hale Ashford, sir," Thomas said, his eyes not meeting Julian's. "You are not a resident here. Your belongings have been removed. If you do not leave the premises, I will be forced to call the police." "The police?" Julian laughed, a dry, hysterical sound. "On me. Please, Mr. Ashford, don't make this difficult." The finality of it hit Julian. The doorman, the bus, the declined card, the hangar, Ilara. He backed away, shaking his head. He was a ghost, haunting his own life. He turned and walked away from the light of the canopy, a rumpled man in a ridiculous linen suit, carrying a briefcase full of useless papers. He walked until his feet were bleeding. He found a grimy, neon-lit motel in Long Island City, just across the river, a place that rented rooms by the hour. He paid $90 in cash. The room smelled of bleach and old cigarettes. The sheets were thin. He lay on the bed, still in his suit, and stared at the flickering fluorescent light in the ceiling. He could see the Manhattan skyline from his dirty window, a glittering, unattainable fortress. He was so close, and yet he had never been farther away. The fall was complete. It wasn't just 40,000 feet. It was a fall from grace, from power, from life itself. And he knew, in the buzzing, awful silence of that cheap motel room, that this was not the bottom. It was just the beginning of the long way down. Julian Ashford learned that day that there is no altitude high enough to escape the truth. He mistook his wife's kindness for weakness and her silence for ignorance. He forgot that the one who signs the checks is the one who sets the flight plan. Ilara Hale and her unborn child were already back in their penthouse, the locks changed, before Julian even found the bus station. He lost his wife, his job, and his pride in a single, icy morning in a Maine hangar. A brutal landing, but one he charted all by himself. What did you think of Julian's downfall? Was Ilara's revenge perfect, or would you have done something different? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is a reminder that the biggest betrayals often come with the steepest consequences. If you loved this drama, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and please subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories every single week. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update.